3 years of a Joe Biden presidency. How did we get here? What's the consequences? And where are we headed? Yeah, let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show. Thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you live from our Cardio Miracle Studios here in lovely Eastern Indiana. Want to learn how to improve your heart health? Well, stick around. We're going to go ahead and talk about that later. But first, joining us here on The Brian Nichols Show today to discuss, yes, how did we get here and what are the implications and where are we headed? Joining me from Sovereign Radio, Scotty Saks. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Hey, Brian, great to have be here with you. Great to let me talk to your audience today, and I'll stick around and learn about heart health because I have high blood pressure.
Well, there you go. We have some good stuff. Good friend of the show, John Hewlett, told us all about his awesome product that is Cardio Miracle. I'll make sure I address that in detail later. But Scotty, first, yes, thank you for joining us here on the show. Really excited about today's conversation. Obviously, digging into all things Joe Biden, 2023, 3 years into his presidency. He is, yes, running for re-election until he's not. I'm waiting to see when that shoe will drop. But what's the implications? What's happened as a result of Joe Biden's policies? And frankly, where are we headed? But before we do that, do us a favor. Introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience. And what is Sovereign Radio?
Thanks a lot, Brian. Well, I've been in mainstream media 40 years. I've worked in the belly of the beast of mainstream media. I've done everything from produce and syndicate TV and radio programming. I've negotiated over $1 billion worth of advertising and sponsorship deals with the television networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. I've worked with them all. I've seen it all. I'll share a couple anecdotes today. And I started Sovereign Radio right before the pandemic. Some folks I was doing business with at Town Square Radio in Texas. We'd sit around after negotiating some advertising deals. I was representing several clients to their radio network, and we'd sit around and talk, and these guys just didn't know the way the world worked. And I started talking to them about the Federal Reserve, about the deep state, and the various and sundry things you and I know, we've been studying for years. And one day they just turned on a mic and said, well, you're going to do a radio show, buddy. And that was 3 years ago. I'm still going strong, and we're in 4 Texas markets and San Diego, California. In 2024, we are going into syndication with a goal of 200 markets. So effectively, Brian, we are infiltrating and subverting mainstream media, broadcasting from the belly of the beast. And, there's a lot of good conservative, doesn't matter if they're Republican or not. They're good conservative, salt of the earth people across the country that listen to AM talk radio. They listen to the likes of a Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Dennis Prager, Charlie Kirk. I could go on and on with the syndicated radio hosts they listen to, but they're good people. They're Fox News viewers, so they're asleep. They're not quite where we're at in the learning curve, and our goal is to wake them up. And that's what we're doing. We're broadcasting from the belly of the beast of mainstream media to wake up good people that want to know the truth. And that's what you and I are all about. I'm sure you're about bringing the truth to people and trying to get them out of the matrix, feed them some red pills every episode. And, I'd like to start how we got here, Brian, because I think that's real important. And I can pull from my years in mainstream media. Very high profile people taught me the way the world really works. Let me start with Peter Jennings, the great ABC newscaster who was number one at 6 o'clock for ABC for 10 years running. And one night I happened to land at a table at an ABC event alone with Peter Jennings. Not important how I got there. Essentially that night was the only seat available in a room of 1,000 people. ABC was putting on a big event for their advertising community. I showed up 40 minutes late, so I sat at the only place available, and it was across from Peter Jennings. I started to eat my food, realized who I was sitting with, and thought, I noticed he was drinking, and he was starting to warm up to me. And I said, I'm going to wait till this guy has about 4 or 5 cocktails, and then I'm going to hit him with my grandfather. My grandfather hated Peter Jennings. He was a Holocaust survivor. He escaped one of Hitler's concentration camps, thanks to the Red Cross, which was once a good organization, by the way. And at the point Peter was loose and warmed up, I said, hey, Peter, I want to ask you about my grandfather. He hated you. He said you were an anti-Semite, Jew hater, and as a Holocaust survivor, that kind of bothered him. He thought you just didn't like the Jewish race. What's that all about? What can you say? He said his answer was twofold, pretty striking. He said, Scotty, your grandfather was a perceptive man, although I am not anti-Semitic and I am not anything close to a Jew hater. When I was a rookie reporter, I did not get hotel rooms. I got host family. My host family was a Palestinian Arabic family that I broke bread with 18 months. I suffered a human emotion called sympathy. And in the plight of the Israeli-Arab conflict, I do relate to the Palestinian Arabic cause as a result of living with Palestinians for 18 months. So your grandfather was a perceptive man. However, and here's the punchline, Brian, he said, Scotty, it doesn't matter what I think, what you think, what anybody thinks. I said, why? You're Peter Jennings. What you say on the news matters to a lot of people. You're the most watched newscast in the world, Peter. He said, it does not matter, Scotty, because everything you see on TV, you hear on radio, is a media construct and a narrative. It's all.
Say it again.
It's a media construct and a narrative to fit the agenda.
Yes.
So that was firsthand. 1989, Brian. Didn't connect any dots that night. Didn't make a lot of it other than, well, something's going on that I don't understand. When he says it's a construct and a narrative, and you and I can fast forward to today, we understand that. We know about Mockingbird Media. We know the CIA infiltrated and subverted. We know about the 4 a.m. talking points. Fast forward 2 years. I was syndicating a radio show for the great Johnny Cash. He was an American patriot. In fact, the radio show I was syndicating was called Johnny Cash American Folklore. It was just Johnny strumming his guitar and telling stories. And he was a great storyteller. He had a lot of great stories about America. It was a real Americana piece of work, so to speak. And I was backstage with his wife, June Carter Cash. We had just cleared our 200th radio station that day when I was backstage with his wife and some friends. She was introducing me to friends. She said, this is a guy that's doing the work Johnny won't do anymore. He's working with the media and the music studio to get Johnny's radio show on the air. And they just got their 200th station today. She was thanking me. And I stopped her. I said, June, thank you, because I'm 29. I'm working with a great legend, Johnny Cash, making money, and I can't thank you enough. She said, you don't understand something, Scotty. Johnny won't work with the media and the music industry anymore, and you're doing that work for him. You're working with the radio stations, getting the show on the air, negotiating with the music record label who own the rights to the music. We had to get the rights to the music negotiated to use it on the radio show. She said, so thank you, because Johnny simply won't work with them anymore. So I had to ask the question, just like I had to ask Peter Jennings, why won't he work with the music industry and the media anymore? And she said, Scotty, they're a Luciferian satanic cult, and he doesn't want to be a part of that satanic cult anymore. So, Brian, put those two things together. We've got a mainstream media. They're the bullhorn for the satanic cult that runs the world. You put those two things together, that's how we got where we're at. Unfortunately, whether you're 40, 50, or 60, you've been listening to mainstream media ostensibly your whole life. I just stopped about 10 years ago listening. And you're indoctrinated. You're brainwashed. You're subjected to that construct and narrative that Peter Jennings talked about. And when it's constructed by a Luciferian satanic cult, what do you expect the world to look like and how we got here? So that's, I think two anecdotes. I have many more. Can tell you, I won't take the time, but I witnessed firsthand the one of the topics that's hot now: human trafficking, pedophilia. I was working with James Brown, traveling with his band during the Living in America tour, producing a TV show called Living in America, and I saw two backup singers who admitted to me they were 14 and 15 years old. With hair and makeup, they looked like they were in their 20s. So nobody ever suspected. No parental guidance on the tour. These girls were traveling with the tour. God knows where they came from without parents. And Johnny would repeatedly grab their ass, pinch their nipples, speak dirty to them. And I saw them often go behind closed doors with James Brown and the band. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what they were doing behind closed doors. So while I never saw anything but some physical abuse from Johnny, grabbing their ass and pinching them and speaking, dirty to them, this was pedophilia in the 90s. I witnessed it firsthand. Again, didn't connect any dots, didn't put two and two together, didn't even connect these three anecdotes into any construct of my own. It was simply thinking to myself, well, we live in a pretty bleak world, but I was making a good living and building a business and climbing the mountain. My focus was my business, my marriage. And I really didn't take the time to understand it until I read G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature Jekyll Island, which is a book about the Federal Reserve. I don't know if you've read it, but
yeah,
great book. And then I put it all together. That's when I started to put together in 2009, 2010. And here we are today with the imposter, the president who's really not a president. He's faking, working his way through this 4-year act, although I don't think he'll make it to the end. I do believe there's some things in work, some people I know, very good contacts inside the military, inside Homeland Security, telling me that Biden will be taken out, and we can only pray this is true, that the military simply has been waiting for the American public to come up to speed, to accept the fact that the elections were stolen, to accept the fact that this deep state is controlling the world, and be able to extract this president without a civil war. In 2015, it's a fact the military wanted to extract Barack Obama. They wanted to take him out. But the two factions in the military, the white hats, the dark hats, we'll call them the good guys and the bad guys, they argued for a period of time over the merits of this action, and they both decided they didn't want a civil war in America. And that's what would have happened in 2015 if they tried to take Barack Obama out. Now today, there's a woman making the rounds. I can't remember Dr. Jan's last name. She just did an interview with David Nino Rodriguez and several other podcasters. She is a Department of Defense contractor. And her job and her team of 6 is to monitor social media and to report back to the military, essentially, what's the pulse of America? What's the sense and tone of where the people in our heads are at by monitoring social media? And she says we're now somewhere between 70 to 80% as an American public, we would accept Joe Biden extracted from the White House, publicly arrested and perp walked. And we can only pray that these things are true. Now, this woman's a Department of Defense contractor. She's not some woman spewing conspiracy theory. She knows what she speaks, and she's been obviously allowed by the military to make these rounds and deliver these podcasts, or she wouldn't be out there. I'll text you her name and one of the interviews so you can put that out to your listeners, because I just can't remember her last name right now, and that's important. But she is a doctor. She is a Department of Defense contractor working in social media to gauge the pulse of America. And she says America's ready for a president like Biden to be taken down and to be perp walked in public. And she talks about a emergency broadcast system, the EBS. We've heard about the EBS being used. to communicate with the American people. She talks about the grid going down, that the internet will go down, that the military will implement an emergency broadcast system. They'll use it to explain to America what's really going on, the truth about 9/11, the truth about Obama and his origins and his foreign influences, the truth about Biden, the elections being stolen, maybe even Las Vegas and some other JFK assassination. Supposedly, they're going to use the emergency broadcast system to educate the American public about everything that's been going on the last number of years. Again, we can only pray this is truth. I don't have evidence. I do have 3 or 4 confirmations of these kinds of things happening from my sources. And we're talking about a late September, October timeframe. So we don't have to wait long to find out if this is really going down.
Scotty, I have lots of questions. I'm sure the audience has lots of questions as well. But before I ask all my questions, first, we got to go ahead and pay the bills. And with that, we're going to go ahead and give a shout out to today's sponsor. And that is our studio sponsor, Cardio Miracle. I teased it there earlier. Yes, Scotty, this is a way you can go ahead and improve your heart health. You mentioned you had high blood pressure. Yeah, I hear that. That's a common thing, not just in a majority of Americans' lives, because cardiovascular disease is, in fact, the #1 killer in the country, leading all other causes of death by like leaps and bounds. And high blood pressure, obviously, is one of those main symptoms, or I guess also a result of a not healthy ticker. So if you are like many of the millions of Americans out there who, yes, your heart health is in fact holding you back from living the life of your fullest, well, have no fear, because Cardio Miracle is here, meaning you can take control of your heart health with this revolutionary natural supplement. It is scientifically formulated to increase the nitric oxide levels in your blood. Okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, I'll tell you what it means. Higher nitric oxide levels in your blood promotes higher levels of circulation by relaxing the blood vessels, lowering your blood pressure, boom, and also reducing inflammation. And with Cardio Miracle, you'll experience the benefits of enhanced blood flow to your hearts and your organs, which also means, yes, gentlemen, improved sexual health as well. So bid farewell to fatigue and say hello to newfound energy and vitality, because each day will feel like a fresh start thanks to Cardio Miracle's support of better sleep quality, which, yes, that is actually one of the things. I've been using Cardio Miracle now for like 4 months, and that's been like easily one of the best things, beyond seeing a great pump at the gym and also just feeling much more energized throughout the day. But sleeping better, that has been just one of the best benefits I've experienced myself, getting a nice night's sleep. And trust me, if you're like me, your body and your mind will finally get the rest you've been praying for. So join the thousands of folks who've already unlocked healthier hearts with Cardio Miracle. Head to cardiomiracle.com. Use code TBNS at checkout. 15% off your order. And folks, by the way, did I mention there is a 100% money back guarantee? So quite literally, you have nothing to lose besides on an unhealthy heart and that blood pressure. So go ahead, make the decision to prioritize your heart health today and embark on a journey to a brighter future with Cardio Miracle. One more time, code TBNS unlocks your exclusive 15% discount there at checkout. One more time, TBNS at checkout. Cardio Miracle, the finest heart and health supplement in the world. Scotty, questions. We have many of them. Okay, now you talked about the challenge that we face, and I agree with you. The challenge is trying to get your average person to tune in and pay attention to what is, yes, the very important things. When your average person hears everything you just outlined, I can guarantee 90+% probably are saying, this is conspiracy gobbledygook. Don't want to even have a conversation. I'm just going to turn off. So to those people,
99% are probably thinking that, right?
Absolutely. So I guess to that 99%, right? Because I think, and this is my take, and if I'm wrong, tell me. I find we have an uphill battle to bring more people into this kind of awareness of what's actually happening. Now, going through the list of things that you outlined as to what could happen and what you've been informed could happen, right? Like, I don't know. But regardless, to that 99%, if we can even get them on board with a couple of things, let's start with like the COVID conversation. Let's start with Fauci. Let's start with, just peel back the first layer of the onion before we get to layer like 72. What, like, do you think that I'm off base in saying that leading with everything at once is going to turn off those people, number one? But number two, if that's the case, how do we then, I guess, in your world, do you think we can best bring those people in and get them to maybe open their eyes to see some things they haven't seen before, plant some seeds, and help them see things that once they see, they can't unsee?
Brian, if we had the time to do those things, I would do them all, and I'm with you every step of the way. I threw this out there today because I want your audience to hear this. So if and when it happens, I happen to think all these things. I'm not a conspiracy theory person. I'm grounded in some very common sense principles, research, homework. I've had too many sources come to me with this information. But let's lay out a couple of facts that people, they're going to have to do a little research and homework, but they're out there. Number one, Donald Trump left the military in charge. When he exited the White House, he was not in charge. He was commander-in-chief of the military, but the military was in charge. He did that through an executive order that Joe Biden just extended the other day. I don't have to memory the executive order, but Donald Trump, continuity of government, it is in fact, Mr. Trump left the military in control of this country because of the stolen elections. He left the military in control, and these are executive orders. They're not any type of conspiracy theory. A man named Derek Johnson, he's a military guy. If you'll go to Derek Johnson on Rumble, you can find all of his videos that explain this continuity of government, this fact that the military is in fact in control. I submit to you, why would Joe Biden extend Donald Trump's executive order to leave the military in control of the government? The military, in fact, recognizes Donald Trump as commander-in-chief. What we have, Brian, are two factions of the military. The Joe Biden faction, the bankrupt corporation. This is another thing, conspiracy theory. Act of 1871, we're a corporation in the United States, a bankrupt one at that. Joe Biden's the president of a bankrupt corporation right now. And of course, he has his military generals that come on TV. Milley and the head of the DOD. I don't remember his name either. I don't pay attention to these guys' names because they're not important. It's a show. We're watching a movie, and these guys are playing actors in a movie. We have the white hat and the black hats. The white hat military, the real military in control, the military generals that got together in 1963 when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. There was actually military generals from around the world, Brian, that got together in 63 when Kennedy was assassinated and said, my God, we got to do something about these intelligence agencies, these politicians, and the multinationals that make up this so-called deep state. We have to do something about them. They've been working quietly in the background for 60-some years now. The reason it's conspiracy theory to your listeners is because they don't publish their agenda. All we have is one side of the story. We only have the mainstream media side. It's only through listening to podcasts like yours and the Derek Johnsons and the David Nino Rodriguez's, the Scott McKays, the Sasha Stones, the SGAnons. I can go on and on. We've all been talking about this for the last year and a half. There are no less than 100 podcasters that are talking about this very thing that I'm presenting today. And I want your audience to hear it because I don't want them to go into absolute shock and awe when things like this happen. It's inconceivable to everybody right now. I realize all we see is this, curmudgeon old man that's fumbling about supposedly running a country. Do you really think that the smart people in politics, in the military, in multinational corporations would let this guy run the world? Do you really think he's controlling the strings? I actually think Barack Obama's in the basement, probably speaking in his ear and, you know, giving him orders. But it's all a movie we're watching. You've got the classic movie setup: the white hats, the dark hats, you know, the good guys, the bad guys, good versus evil, God versus Satan. And I'm telling you, God's going to win. He's not forsaken this earth. Look, if he doesn't win, Brian, we're left to a one world government. What's next for the deep state? Central bank digital currencies and the World Health Organization calling the shots through a pandemic treaty that they're going to vote on in May of 2024. Joe Biden, if he's still around, will sign his name to a global pandemic treaty giving the World Health Organization control and power over the United States health and wellness. And they will lock us down. And if we don't comply with their central bank digital currencies, they'll just shut us off the system. Go try to live off the grid of a central bank digital currency system where there is no cash. This is all the world we can expect to face if I'm wrong and all my associates are wrong and all of my military intelligence, Homeland Security, U.S. Treasury contacts are wrong. If they're all barking up the wrong tree, Brian, then we are in fact heading to a one world government, a central bank digital currency, and control of everything health in the world from an NGO called the World Health Organization. It's not a pretty picture if I'm wrong. And
Scotty,
only one side can win, right?
That's true. Scotty Saks, unfortunately, look, we are hard pressed for time, which means we are going towards the part of the show we like to call final thoughts. If you're cool with it, I'll kick things off and I'll turn things over to you for my call to action for the audience today. This conversation, I think, you know, for a lot of the audience is one that, you know, to your point, Scotty, they maybe were not privy to. And this is something that, regardless of whether you're hearing Scotty and as he's outlining everything today, whether you think it's conspiracy minded or you're ready to take action, I think overall, the importance of people plugging in and starting to pay attention is paramount here. We have seen, and Scotty, you set this stage very early on in the conversation. And when you look at how so many folks just live their life, they don't really pay attention to what's happening in the political sphere. They don't pay attention to the policy because either A, they don't think they have a role that really matters and plays significant portion in the outcomes or the impact of the outcomes, or they have so much stuff they have to worry about themselves that they're focused on that, right? So I think it is interesting and I dare say reassuring that we see so many people now engaging in conversations that weren't being had before. I think to some of my coworkers from the past who would be having conversations with me that they were scared to have. And now I see on Facebook, they're openly having, and I'm like, good. I'm glad that we're getting away from the fear. People are starting to engage outside of the traditional 3x5 card of allowable opinion. And they're starting to go out and actually speak their mind and question accepted narratives. I have a bumper sticker folks can go ahead and purchase over on our store that says, question everything. Absolutely. You should always have a skeptical mind. Now, that does not mean that you should chase every single conspiracy theory just because it's going towards your accepted narrative. But it does mean that you should always raise your eyebrow, especially when there's only one accepted narrative. And if that narrative is not allowed to be questioned, definitely raise your eyebrow a little bit more. That's my final thoughts for us today. Scotty, what do you have for us on your end?
My final thoughts are, Brian, despite what I'm talking about going on at a global, big picture level, Mike Flynn says it best: local action equals national impact. No matter what's in store with the globalist versus the nationalist, we the people versus the deep state, we are left to take our country back at a local level. And my final thoughts, call to action to your audiences: we got to get active at a local level. We got to take our school boards back. We got to take our city hall back. We got to take our county board back. And we got to put sheriffs in that are constitutional sheriffs. So check out the CSPOA, Sheriff Richard Mack's Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. The sheriff has the most power in a county. He can tell the feds to take a hike and chase the feds out of a county. Get local in your school board. Know who's teaching your kids, who's running the school board. Get local in the county boards. Get active, in the county boards, and certainly in your city hall. Most people can't even name one of their city councilmen or the people running the city they live in. They wouldn't have a clue of the 6 or 7 people controlling the city they live in. We got to take those back because, Brian, they're all infiltrated and subverted. They've all been blackmailed and bribed down to the local level. The CCP's admitted to blackmail and bribing local city halls in hundreds and hundreds of cities. That's not a secret. So we got to take our local community back, no matter what happens, right or wrong about this big picture, about a white hat military intelligence group and civic leaders, politicians, and multinational corporation, good people working to take the globe back at a big picture level. We are not going to get any help at the local level. We got to hang in there in the trenches, fight to take our local communities back. It all happens at the local level, Brian.
Scotty Saks, it's Sovereign Media. Scotty, where can folks go ahead, terrestrial radio on the AMs, but also where can they go ahead and find you on the social medias should they want to continue the conversation?
We are on all the podcast platforms, iHeart, Google Play, Spotify. Go to sovereignradio.net. You can find our radio station affiliates and all the podcast platforms we're on. That's sovereignradio.net. Thanks, Brian. It's been a pleasure. I hope I didn't shake it up too bad, but I wanted people to hear this today.
Scotty, not a problem. It was a great conversation. And folks, I'm sure that you definitely want to go ahead and talk about today's episode. And if that's the case, well, please go ahead, reach out to Scotty, tag him, but also tag yours truly, x.com, formerly Twitter, as well as Facebook at B Nichols Liberty. Also, you can go ahead and find the Brian Nichols Show on both video and audio platforms. The video platforms, we have ourselves on YouTube, on Rumble, and Ben Swann's Sovereign, SOVREN. A little different than your Sovereign there, Scotty. And that's where we go ahead and support Ben Swann and his independent news entity, which, by the way, if you are watching us over on Sovereign, well, congratulations. You're seeing today's episode before anybody else. That's your Sovereign exclusive. And also for the podcast and audio medium, you can go, oh, wait, no, go back, Brian, audio, Twitter, or a video, Twitter. We do entire episodes now on Twitter. I forgot. I had to mention that. With Elon updating Twitter, we are now able to upload entire episodes. So you can go ahead and catch entire episodes of The Brian Nichols Show in their video entirety over on Twitter/X.com. Sorry. Going forward to audio. So we have podcasts over on YouTube. So YouTube Music, actually, excuse me. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever it is really you get your podcasts, you can find The Brian Nichols Show. So hit that subscribe button. And by the way, we have over 768 other episodes of the program. So going all the way back to, I think, like 2018 or so, start with episode 1 all the way to today. I guarantee each of those episodes will leave you educated, enlightened, and informed. But other than that, that's all we really have for you. So with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here from our Cardio Miracle Studios for Scotty Saks. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.